But my name is Jason. I'm a full-time speaker, leadership trainer. I have two parents that were ag teachers. I was an FFA officer at multiple different levels, and I'm just thankful to do what I love to do every single day. And so I've spent a lot of time working with ag teachers, working with FFA members across the country. And I know we have teachers, we have chapter officers in here. And so I'm going to kind of talk to both audiences at the same time about the same thing. Last episode was our first one, and that was about how to engage people in your chapter over the summer months, keep that momentum going. This episode, we had an overwhelming amount of people say, hey, we would love to have you cover training chapter officers. And so I'm calling this one, this is a multi-part series. So this one is called Chapter Officer Training Retreat or Repeat. I know, rhyming is what we do here. And so basically we're going to cover, and I'm going to try and cram about 6 hours of content into 40 minutes now. 40 minutes because I want to respect your time and get you out of here. And to be honest, my attention span doesn't last much longer than that. I don't expect anyone else's to either. As we go throughout, I'll be asking for participation. I'll be doing different things. We'll play a game at one point, which I think is kind of fun. You'll recognize it. Everyone will recognize it. So all you'll need is maybe a pen and paper, and then maybe your phone with a camera, which everyone's phone has a camera at this point. And your camera will be able to read a QR code halfway through. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. We're going to get rolling. Okay, can everyone see this okay? And if your camera's off, I completely understand. I also had not had a haircut since pre-pandemic before Sunday, and I wasn't going to get one, but I did, and so now I can have my camera on. So everyone can see that. That's fantastic. I'm going to keep the chat bar open. Let me open that real quick so I can see. Make that a little bigger. All right. Feel free to use that chat to communicate with me. If you guys have anything pop up, just let me know. I'm going to be looking to my left because that's where my second monitor is. But trust me, I'm here, right here with you. All right, let's get rolling. So while we're here, really quick in the chat, let's take 1 minute. We did this last time. I think it's important to do it every time. Why are we here? Tell me, why did you become a chapter officer, teacher, whatever you are? Principal, maybe you're a web apps, call, hacker, I don't know. But whatever you are, why did you become this thing? Let's take just 1 minute, 30 seconds or less, throw it in the chat. Love it, love it, love it. A lot of it related to students, inspiring students. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. That's what we're here for, right? So as we go, let's remember that. Let's remember why we're here, why we're taking some 40 minutes out of our day. And again, I'm going to try to make it 40 minutes, maybe a little longer, to do this. It's a short amount of time to invest, and I know you guys invest a lot more time, but I'm going to try and give you some valuable tools that way you can continue to pour into the lives of your students as we go. So we did this last time, and again, if you were here with us, you'll recognize this screen, but it's a little different. So last time was all about engagement, engaging people. This time, the framework that we're going to kind of build off of today is really about our purpose, right? So why we're here. So our purpose is to lead, right? Whether you're an ag teacher, you're a chapter officer, if you're leading students, if you're leading your peers, your purpose is to lead, right? And we lead by influencing. Anyone ever heard the definition of leadership as influence? John T. Maxwell said that quote, but it's one of those things that kind of gets credited to a bunch of people, but I think John T. Maxwell is the original guy that said that. We influence through knowledge, action, and relationships, and I'll prove that to you here in a second with what we call Maxwell's levels of leadership. And by learning, taking action, and building relationships, we fulfill the mission of the FFA. And so for me, as a person, as a business owner, as a fiance, as a younger brother, as a son. I want to stay mission focused in everything that I do, and so I remember the mission of the FFA as the center of what I'm doing right now. When we learn, act, and build, we influence. Okay, so by gaining knowledge, by taking action, and by building relationships, we're able to influence people. When we influence, we lead, and when we lead, we fulfill our purpose. So it kind of comes full circle there. So as we go, like I said, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about these knowledge, action, and relationships. I didn't just make that up. This isn't something I thought was a good idea. This is something that actually, if you look back, the National Buffet created this document called Empower, like the letter M and then power. You may have seen it before. It's about 200 pages long, and it's good, brilliant content, but there's so much in there about training chapter officer teams, about having a chapter officer team, that it's almost overwhelming. So I can tell you a lot of the content that I'm taking today is a mixture of John C. Maxwell leadership, of my personal philosophy, and some content from that document. So if you recognize it, I'm absolutely using it as a source, and it's sourced at the end. If you want the full document, have it. However, I thought to save you some time, I'd pull out the best chunks, and so I've taken maybe like a page and a half from that 200 pages and said, I think this is what's important when talking about chapter officer retreats or repeats. Really quick, let's take a look at something called Maxwell's levels of leadership. There's 5 levels, okay? And at level 1, if you're taking notes, you can write this down. Level 1 is leadership by position. Leadership by position, okay? So leadership by position is all about your ability to influence people based on the title that you have, okay? So for example, actually, let me ask this. Who's got an example of when the only influence they have was granted by the title that they held? Who's got an example of that? Teachers, you probably have some good ones. Feel free to unmute and share if you'd like.
Chapter president.
Chapter president, okay. Yeah. For me, I think about when I was a kid at Sunnyside Elementary School in the 3rd grade. I remember Mrs. Barnes was our recess moderator. And I can tell you that the influence she had over my life was purely title-based. I did not respect this woman, but I respected her whistle, and I respected her authority. She was never in it to make friends, right? She was never in it to build a relationship with us. She was like, I'm here to make sure you hooligans don't kill yourselves on the monkey bars. That was her job, okay? So leadership by position was all about Mrs. Barnes was about, okay? Now, this is a place that's easy to get to. Your rights are granted by your title. So if you're a chapter officer, congratulations, you've achieved level 1 leadership. However, it's not a place we want to stay. It's not somewhere that is desirable to remain with a person, right? If you're trying to influence someone, you want to ascend to another level. So we look at level 2, and that's leadership by permission. Leadership by permission, okay? Now, this is all about building rapport. It's about solid relationships. Now, instead of following because they have to, okay, instead of having a room full of freshmen that have to do what you say, teachers, right? Now, it's a room full of students that want to follow you, okay? You've built a relationship with them, and now that leadership, that influence is based on that relationship. And so now they want to follow your influence. We're getting to a point where we're able to make some change, okay? So that's leadership by permission. Level 3, and I'm flying through this, I know, is leadership by production. Level 3 is leadership by production, okay? So the goal in this level is to become an agent of change in someone's life. So what gives you credibility as a leader? Consistent and proven results. So ag teachers, you have a student as a freshman, and at the end of the year, you say, man, I really hope that you don't take my class next year. You don't say it out loud, but you say it in your head, right? You're like, man, but then but then they do, and you're like, okay. And then senior year comes around, and that's one of your favorite students, okay? Your influence on them grew and grew and grew because they saw consistent and proven results from you as a leader. So your influence or your leadership is based on what you've consistently and proven and produced over the course of that relationship. you have credibility now. Okay. 1 second, let me move my chat so I can keep an eye on it. Level 4, now we're getting places. Level 4 is all about empowering others. Okay? This comes reproducing leaders from followers. Why do people follow? Because they have personally benefited. Okay? So at this level, we see the people that were following us begin to exemplify the same leadership traits that we've been trying to exemplify for them. They are now the leader. We've begun to reproduce leaders from our followership. Our influence has grown so much that they are now leading other people and probably have this levels of leadership with other individuals. That's big time. Okay? And finally, level 5 is pinnacle leadership. And this is where things get crazy. So like John C. Maxwell would be at pinnacle leadership with a lot of people because he's developed organizations. Now, when it says organizations, I want to clarify. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to start a business or like start a brand new chapter. That's not what that means. It means more like you've had such an influence on people's lives that a movement has begun or an ideology has been accepted. So you look at an ag teacher that's been in a program that's created a culture of maybe competitiveness or maybe community service. I think of Perry had created a culture in Oregon of community service and food for all, and they would raise more. They would be more active in a food for all program than any other chapter in the country, and that was a part of that culture. He is level 5 leadership, pinnacle leadership, influence is at its highest. Now, as teachers, this is a question I don't have an answer to. As teachers and as chapter officers, if you're on here, what level of leadership do we think that chapter officers probably attain as chapter officers in the time that they're chapter officers? What level?
Jason, probably level 1 or 2.
Okay.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah. Okay, so we think maybe level position. Feel free, guys, if you're on here, just maybe mute your mic if you're not going to share. That'd be awesome. Level 2, seeing level 2. Okay. Yeah, I think level 1 and 2 is pretty common, and I think that's a pretty good answer. I think a lot of chapter officers, and now chapter officers, feel free to weigh in too. We'll get to level 1, but like I said, level 1 you get to just by having an office position. So your chapter sentinel, your chapter historian, boom, level 1 granted. But there's some things we have to do to move up the levels, and I'm actually going to have, since I save my voice a little bit, have some interaction here. There are 8 considerations or things we have to consider about these levels of leadership when talking about them. So I'm just going to call on someone. I don't know if this is good or not. Teachers are supposed to do this, but I'm going to call on someone for some help for each of these. So 8 people will read these off the card. So Lori Hope, if you could read this one, I just see your name. That'd be awesome.
Copy. So some things to consider: you can move up levels, but you never leave the previous level behind. It's a building process.
Absolutely. So you can move up levels, but you will never stop influencing at the level you were before. An example of this is if you've ever met or if a state FFA officer or maybe a teacher has ever, I think your ag teacher, right? Think of your ag teacher. If they had an impact on you, right? A lot of people said they became ag teachers because of their ag teachers. When you're introducing that person to someone else, you will always probably include in that introduction, oh, he was my ag teacher. Or she was my ag teacher. Their title, right? So no matter, even if that person's at level 4 leadership, you're always going to include and remember that they started at level 1 leadership with you. Awesome. All right, I'm not going to call on people anymore. Miss Hopi, I apologize. I felt bad doing that. And so I'm just going to have any volunteer who wants to read this second one, feel free to, let's read this second card.
You are not one level. You are at every level. It all depends on which relationship you're referring to.
Thank you so much, Shelly. That's right. So the level of leadership you're at is not like, oh, our chapter president's a level 3 leader. Everyone thinks that. It's not, you're not a Pokemon trainer. You don't just get badges, right? Like, it all depends on the relationship you're referring to. So if you're a chapter officer, you're a third-year chapter officer, and you're a senior, and a group of freshmen come in, you're not automatically at level 3 leadership with all of those freshmen. You've got to start all over. Okay, so that's extremely important to remember, especially when we're talking about officer positions that are a year-to-year basis. All right, we're going to rush along here. I'll read this one. You are not on the same level with every person. So kind of a similar that we just talked about. Every person's different. You're not on the same level with every person. All right, who will read this one for us?
You must earn your level of leadership with each person, and that can go up or down at any time.
Absolutely. Yeah. You must earn it. And we'll talk about what earning it means here in a second. And by the way, y'all, if you're furiously writing and I'm going too fast, these slides are going to be totally available to you. So no worries there. And also, this comes straight from Maxwell's book, Empowering the Leader Within, something like that. I've sourced it at the end. So if you want the book, it's available to you. All right, who will read this next one?
Up very slowly, but moving down can happen quickly.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is something I think is vital to know and understand, especially for young people. You can spend years trying to build influence with a person, and you can make one bad decision, and it completely eliminates any influence you had with that person. Unfortunately, we've seen far too many examples of that in the FFA world. And we can think of some people, and we know that it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that their influence on your life, their ability to influence you as a leader is shot. It's gone, right? So moving up occurs slowly. It takes time and years and effort. But moving down can happen in an instant with one statement, one post, one anything, right? All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to read the rest of these. So moving up always requires further growth, more commitment, and more energy. So if you want to influence people, you're telling me I have to commit to that? You're telling me it takes energy? Like, to be a leader, it's like effort? That's crazy. Yeah, absolutely. If you want to influence people, you've got to be committed to that process. Not just committed to getting elected. Not just committed to giving a great speech. Not just committed to showing up to banquet and standing in the spotlight. You've got to be committed to that process. Each advance allows you to be more effective in leading others because your influence increases at each level. Okay, this is the whole reason we're talking about this, that I'm starting off with this, is because for your chapter officers, or as a chapter officer, for you to influence your chapter members, you've got to realize that you've got to be moving up these levels. So you've got to put in the time and the work. And finally, every time you lead different people, you start the process over again. This is why really good leaders are rare. Because it takes so much effort and so much time to ascend to that level with that many people. Okay? And I'm not talking about Instagram influencers or YouTubers. Those are not rare people. That's just using the internet, okay? I'm talking about people that actually make tangible difference in people's lives, okay? They put in the time. So here's a recap of them. 5 levels of leadership. We answered the question at the beginning, what level do you think chapter officers get to? I'm just reading usernames, so I apologize if I mispronounce it. Bellamy C says, I would hope for at least level 4. This is where I'd like my officers to remain. Hey, awesome. I'm all about it. For me, personally, we're going to talk about the first 3 levels of leadership. Position, permission, and production. What's the position of your chapter officer? Who is your chapter officer? How are they building relationships? And what are they actually producing? What results are they putting out that allows them to influence members of your chapter? Okay, if they get to level 4, fantastic. For me, when we're talking about training chapter officers from a big picture standpoint, 10,000-foot view, those are the 3 levels we're going to be covering. And I'm going to tell you how I would structure chapter officer trainings to get them there. Okay? Quick question. Feel free to throw it in the chat. Are you more like student A, and when you can just think back to your high school days if you're not in high school anymore, student A or student B? Which student were you more like? These are definitely stock photos. These are not friends of mine. So student A or student B? Okay. See a lot of A, see B, see both. Okay. Tell me, what's the difference between these two? Anyone unmute and share? Feel free. What's the difference?
Their attitude on how they're approaching the task that they're doing.
Yeah. What do you think is affecting their attitude?
It could be a lot of different things. It could be their perspective of the task that they're trying to accomplish. It could be external factors that are going through. One looks like they're connected to other people.
Probably gonna do it like outside. This is gonna put sawdust everywhere and paint everywhere. Yeah.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
make sure our mic is muted if we are not sharing. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead, continue. I'm sorry. You said external factors is the last thing I heard.
Yeah, external factors. It could also be, it looks like student A maybe has a defeatist attitude towards what's going on and is trying to tackle something on their own, where student B has more of a growth mindset and is maybe reaching out to somebody else for assistance on their task.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of differences there could be, and in stock photos, it's hard to tell exactly what it could be. I think one of the differences could be kind of the approach, like you said, they were taking to their learning, right? And so I've been student A before. Now, I'll say, thankfully, at Oklahoma State, when I got my ag ed degree, I didn't have to be student A all too often, but I was also not student B all the time. So sorry about the printer noise in the background, y'all. Great, Mom. Thank you. This is her classroom, so I'm at her mercy. So I cannot control this. She's the boss. So student B, right? He looks a little happier, a little more relaxed. He's kind of taking a break from studying. He's like, I got this. Student A looks like she forgot to study, or maybe she, decided to hang out with her friends for a little too long, and then realize, oh man, I have a test. So let's take a look. For me, we're going to talk about these two learning styles. So student A is a representation of what we call massed practice, cramming, right? So training and learning sessions that are long and intense, aka a chapter officer retreat. Now, hold your horses. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Student B, what we call distributed practice. Learning is broken up into a number of short sessions over a long period of time, aka repeat. Now, initially when I was thinking, I was like, man, I'm so much for repeat than I am retreat. However, after some personal reflection, I take it back halfway. Which option do you think is best for training chapter officers? Two paths. Which one would you take? Retreat or repeat?
Both.
Oh snap! With the good answer. There's a lot of people, I don't know who said that, but that's the correct answer. Yes, that's absolutely right. We're going to talk about both in a short amount of time, and I'm going to talk about why, and the Empower document reinforces this. Okay, what a retreat does, and what it does not. You may have had time to read it. I don't know about you guys, I wasn't concentrating. It knocks out the big rocks. So if you have things that are really important for your chapter to accomplish at the beginning of the year, knocks out the big rocks, okay? It provides a fun team bonding experience. It's exciting. It's, a kickoff. It's kind of a good starting point. Gives newly elected officers something to immediately look forward to. I know I always looked forward to the chapter retreats that we went on. We always got like a beach house or, up in the mountains or something like that. It allows for concentrated team work time, which without distraction, which is really, really, really hard to accomplish. I hear my mom talk all the time about how she got 5 out of the 6 together, or, if you're training a parley team, it's just, there's always one missing, something going on, because chapter officers, you're busy, right? There's other things going on in your life. And it helps create some team culture. What it does not solve every problem in your chapter. You cannot go in there and think, okay, we have 10 things to accomplish. It's just impossible. It doesn't scratch the surface of leadership development needed for these officers to be effective at what you're asking them to do the entire year. It doesn't happen without cost, and it does not have a lasting impact on growth and development of officers without follow-up. Okay, that is where the repeat comes in. So, last thing on retreat. Well, not last thing, but another thing. So, a good retreat, and these are going to be available to you, so don't feel you have to write it all down. Starts with a road trip, in my opinion. You got to have it a little bit further away than home, and this comes straight from the Empower document. Make it feel like the officers, like it's a vacation for them, right? They should not be driving back and forth to it every single day. If it's a 3-day retreat, they should be there the entire time. Okay, loads of hype. Expectations are everything. This should be Disney World. Okay, this should be Dollywood. Okay, what I like to refer to as a redneck Six Flags. Dollywood. I love it. Okay, if you want to take your chapter officers up to Gatlinburg, if that's an option for you, great choice. Okay, has a magnetic environment. Everything speaks. So what does your space say? One suggestion I'd have, and you may know this, go on Amazon and buy a $20 bag of STEM fidget toys. STEM fidget toys. These are like the flubber stuff and the little like squares and the mini puzzles. Something that during a long period of time or training at the retreat or work time they can just be messing with. That helps a lot with creating a space. Fun colors, whatever. Hang a ribbon or two. Okay. It follows the 70-20-10 rule. You're like, Jason, what is that? What's the 70-20-10 rule? 70% of your time in your agenda should be spent on experiences. 20% should be spent on relationships, and 10% should be spent on direct instruction. Okay. Now, by experiences, I don't just mean fun like kayaking, canoe. Experiences can also be planning an event together or working. But only 10% of your time should be on the actual formal, here is knowledge, please accept with your ears. Okay? 20% relationships, 70% experiences. And I have a document that lays that out a little bit more. It's got clearly defined.
Jason,
yeah.
can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
I'm just had a question. Like, our school district does not allow our chapter to do retreats. Do you know of another way we could get the same benefit, but without it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm assuming you guys are allowed to have. So you mean you're not just allowed to travel to a place?
Right. They're not allowing overnight because we have a male-female officer team.
Right.
So okay. They don't want that. I mean, it's no different than going to LDE or CDE contests. They have told us no retreat.
Right. I understand. Man.
Call it a training.
Yeah, I think so. Or what you could do, take your classroom and I mean, it depends how much work you want to put into it, but create an environment somewhere. Maybe you borrow a teacher's classroom. Maybe you borrow, I don't know if you have culinary at your school or something, but create an environment that's different than what just a regular meeting would be. So it feels different. The expectations are different. And, if they can stay there for, I don't know, make it, 2 or 3 days where they're there, and while they're there, cell phones are away, they're disconnected from the grid or whatever. Bring in a guest, put together a program for them that feels special, like kind of a mini conference for them, so they feel like, even though they don't get to go anywhere cool, that's, I'll say your school's cool, but like, you create a cool space for them, and I think the environment can actually create that retreat type feeling for you. Good question. Yeah, other suggestions coming in the chat. Love that. Thank you, guys. Where did my chat go? It went away. Let me pull it up again here. Okay. A good retreat avoids barriers to officers attending, so it should be low cost or free. I know that's always tough, but you really should make it simple for people to attend. Pre-work, okay? Don't give any homework prior to. I know sometimes it's inevitable, but just try to make it to where they're showing up excited. It shouldn't feel like they're getting ready for a CDE, like they got to study or something. Pressure to perform. Okay, there's no competition, and I mean, you may have some like balloon toss competition, stuff like that, but don't make it to where like, all right, we're all writing our chapter officer RAs here, retiring addresses. Don't try and solve all your world's problems again, all the chapter's problems. Then it avoids leaving officers feel like there's so much work to do that they don't even know where to start. Okay, it's a good kickoff point. This is not. Let's not get it confused with a week's worth of just a work session. Okay, all right. Here's how I would structure a chapter officer retreat. Day one, I would focus on position. Okay, that's self-discovery. What are your values, strengths, your purpose or your why, and what are the ethics of the office to which you've been elected to? All of those are level one position skills to discuss. Day two, and again, this is not all-inclusive what I would include in an agenda. I'm just talking purely about the leadership aspect of that day. Day two is about permission, relationship building. That's level two. Conversation skills, communication, demonstrating compassion, how to manage your time, do you have mentors and coaches, things like that. And finally, day three, talking about production. So skills, public speaking, running a meeting, planning events, building habits, developing skills. This is how I would structure the leadership content of a retreat. Day one, you focus on leadership content of position in the morning, and then you apply that to a certain task relevant to your chapter in the afternoon. And I actually have an agenda we'll talk about later on. Okay. I'm going to move on. Like I said, this is way more than I have time for. We're not going to do this, but I'm going to send a document to everyone it's really simple, and my goal was that for you to be able to structure the content portion of your chapter officer retreat in 5 minutes or less. Pull 3 topics from each level, or 1 topic from each level, insert it into a day, and say, this is the event in our chapter we're going to apply it to. That's, for me, I wanted to make it easy for you to plan your content as teachers. And chapter officers, if you're in here and your teacher's not present, hey, you have absolutely the same amount of ability to help plan a chapter officer retreat as your advisor does, okay? Help them out. Share these resources with them and say, hey, I know that I'm starting off at level 1 leadership. Let's learn about this, this, and this. I think they'll be all for it. All right. We're going to take a really quick, I've been talking a lot. Everyone pull out your cameras on your phone and take 60 seconds to scan this QR code and see where it takes you. Take you down memory lane. 60 seconds. There is a point to this, I promise. 60 seconds. Time starts now. See who can get the highest score here. All right, 15 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, time. All right, everyone throw your scores into the chat, just out of curiosity. We'll see. There is a point to this, I promise. Dang, got some professionals in here. Some people are like, yeah, I was at the arcade a lot growing up. All right, so let's talk about this. We just had an experience. Each of us played Pac-Man. Let me ask this. If you were to take some time, think about what you did in your performance, kind of analyze a little bit about, what you could have done better, and then try it again. Just by a raise of hand, people on the camera, who thinks they could get a higher score? Anyone? Okay. I bet 9 times out of 10 you would. And here's why. Teachers, you've seen this before. Oh, they're right. Teachers, you've seen this before. Students, you may not have. We just did what we experienced. If we were to do this again, is called Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Okay. We learn this way. It happens naturally. We know this. We have an experience. We reflect on that experience. We analyze the results to either the same experience or another experience. Chapter officers learn this exact same way. The best chapter officers have someone who is intentionally helping them and shaping their Kolb's model, okay? What do I mean by that? There's experiences you're going to ask your chapter officers to participate in throughout their year. There are certain skills required to be good at those experiences. So, if I was training chapter officers, what I would do, now we've moved past the retreat and we're going on to the repeat now. What I would do to reinforce the things we talked about at the chapter officer retreat, to ensure that they're getting poured into throughout the year, is I would look at my calendar, maybe it's my POA of events, my chapter, and I would say, okay, I have chapter banquet on June 21st. What skills are required for them to be successful at that event? Not what needs to happen to make it happen. I know we need a meal. I know we need an agenda. I know we need a keynote speaker, all those things. No, what skills do my chapter officers need? Okay, they need to be good at public speaking, and that's probably about the amount of time we have to improve. They probably need a lot more things, but top priority is public speaking. Then I would say, okay, that's June 21st. I'm going to go 2 weeks prior to that, and I'm going to create an experience to train them to be better public speakers on June the 7th. They're going to have that experience. They're going to reflect on it, analyze it, and apply that experience to the experience of chapter banquet. Here's what that looks like. Identify experience your chapter officers will have. Identify what skill they'll need to make that experience a success. Train them, pour into them, give them that training. And then after the experience you train them for, have them reflect on their performance. Number 4 is something that, because of time or lack thereof, we simply don't do enough. We don't reflect on how things went. We're like, whew, got that done. Let's move on to the next 25 things I got to do. If we make reflection routine, then we make learning intentional, okay? We have to make sure that there's a reflection aspect to what we do as chapter officers, as ag teachers, as whoever, because action without reflection is meaningless, and we'll cover that in a second. Here's this looks like practically. Chapter banquet is on, I put these numbers real big because I couldn't see them very well, is on this Tuesday. I don't have numbers, but it's on that Tuesday. I say, okay, they're going to have to know how to be good at public speaking to be successful at that. Public speaking training with Jeff. I put Jeff. You can also hire me to do it. I do these things. This is my job. And Jeff is fictional, so good luck calling him. Okay, that's public speaking training with Jeff 2 weeks prior to. And finally, within the week following or 2 weeks following, they have a reflection opportunity, and you coach them through that reflection. Hey, how'd you think chapter banquet went? You know, I noticed when you were giving your speech, you sped up a couple times. Is that something you normally do? Or, hey, how can we make sure that you don't do that in the future? Kolb's cycle, let me go back to that real quick, is happening all the time in your students. This is happening when it's not. So to ensure that the outcome is what we desire for our young people and our leaders, let's make sure we're being intentional about how we're setting up these experiences for our students. I said this before, but a good friend of mine, Austin Large, he works for Texas FFA. He's the, I don't want to call it executive director. I don't make his title wrong, but he's the boss man. He said this: action without reflection is meaningless. He may have stolen it from someone, but that's who said it to me for the first time, so that's what I'm quoting. We take an action, we have an experience, we don't reflect on it, it's hard to mean anything. Another document I've created, and I'll show you guys real quick, is this right here, and I'll share it with you. Tips for intentional officer reflection. Okay, make it routine. 3-2-1 method. Effective coaching, journaling, team convo, and then finally just do it at some point. I'll share that with you, so don't worry about that. That'll be shared with you. Another thing I'm going to do is how to plan a chapter officer retreat. So that's a 7-step process. Some of you guys may be like, yeah, I got that down already, no worries. But just some things to keep in mind, and it explains that 70-20-10 rule. Okay, and then finally, the last one I'm sharing is this retreat outline. And this is, and there's a blank copy down here. Top priorities to accomplish in order of importance. When I share it, it will not have the information in there. And then day 1, level 1, day 2, level 2, day 3, level 3. And I know some people got to jump off. No worries. We're wrapping up here in the next 2 minutes. Okay. Those will all be coming your way shortly after this. The last thing I want to offer you, so I actually, as part of something I did for my mom as a project, and I just posted on my website for other teachers to purchase, I created these bell ringers, these warm-ups. They're all leadership-based, and there's some FFA-based, but they really are just miniature leadership activities. So if you're like, I don't know where to start in training my chapter officers as far as leadership goes, and I don't really have time to create content, I've created that for you. Because we're doing this through Bloom for Good, I've created I think it's a discount code, and I'm not going to write it down. I'm going to say it verbally just so you have it. The code is Bloom for Good, BLOOMFORGOOD, and everything on there is $1. It costs $1 for like 15 miniature leadership activities around relationship building, around I'm creating a time management one right now, around goal setting, around self-discovery, like values and strengths. There's FFA ones as well. On my website, and I'll share that with you right there. This will be linked in the document. Here's an example of one. Again, these are for use in your classroom with your students. So that's why the language is going to be the way they are. But you could say, hey, chapter officer team, let's knock out 3 relationship building activities this week. And that's your skill development for this week. So those, again, if you put that discount code in there, Bloom for Good, at checkout, they'll be $1 when you buy it. So I want to make those. I tried to make them free. It literally wouldn't let me, so I apologize. It's just how my website works. I don't pay for the premium one, so I can't make stuff free. But Bloom for Good discount code. It'll be $1 for you, and there'll be all of those and more on there. So jasonwetzler.com/teacher resources. With that, man, I talked a lot, and I'm 1 minute over time. I apologize. Stay connected with us. I want to thank Bloom again for just making this happen. This is their idea. This is something that's incredible. If you guys need, and I'm not just saying this, but if you need a way to virtually fundraise this summer, if you have some of those restrictions talking about, we can't gather, we can't do these things, that's an excellent option. And finally, the sources for us. If you want the Empower document, it's linked in the PDF that'll send out. And then John T. Maxwell's book, I think this links to an article about the 5 levels of leadership where I get that information. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. Hey, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you joining us. If I can help you in any way, please let me know. Feel free to reach out us on Facebook or whatever. Message me at wetzler.jason@gmail.com. This is what I do for a living. I love it. I thank you for what you do for a living. And at this point, feel free to jump off. But if we have any questions or things going on in the chat, I'll check in on that. Would love to hear your questions and how we can help you moving forward. Real quick before we do that, the next Bloom episode will be on actual content. I'm going to go over, hey, here's a 45-minute goal setting workshop you can do with your students, and just kind of give you some of my content. Any questions I can answer, anything. I know we had one about retreats, but I'm going to stop talking and let y'all ask some questions.
Okay, Jason, chances are we're going to be doing this virtually. So any tips or tricks, or the fact that most of us have probably never done it virtually, so there might not be tips and tricks yet.
Yeah, what will that content one be? The content one will be in 2 weeks. I think it's set for June the 30th. Check on Bloom's pages for that. I don't want to be for sure. Sorry, Shelly. Virtual chapter officer training. I tell y'all what, I've done in the past 3 weeks. I'm ashamed of how much time I spent in front of my computer doing trainings. It's not as good. It's not a substitute completely, right? But sometimes it's reality we deal with, and that's fine. Some tips: keep your days short. Spread it out over a long period of time. I recommend that in person, and I recommend that twofold in virtual settings. Keep your days short. The other thing I would do is just, since we have to do it virtually, I would shave down your list of priorities of what you think is essential for your chapter officers. And again, if you're going to provide them training throughout the year, you don't need to give it all in the beginning. So maybe your retreat is no longer 3 days because you can't go somewhere, but maybe your retreat is an hour and a half a day for 4 days, and you simply cover the big ideas. And you only do 15 minutes of leadership content and then an hour and 15 minutes of planning for chapter. Another thing I said on that retreat outline is the only thing you should really be thinking about as far as content is what's your officer development objective what's your chapter development objective, and then I had one more as well. Hold on here. And then what's your team development objective? Okay, if you knock out those three things, then you've made some progress. But that actually, I'm going to write that down because virtual trainings, I was really hoping that we'd just have a vaccine by now and we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, that's a reality we live in.
You and the rest of us.
Let me write that down real quick.
Yes, Pierce has a really good
Hey,
idea.
Shelly.
Hey.
Hey, from North Carolina. On that new FFA website, that Forever Blue, there is some ladies, I can't remember, that are doing they had a video training of a virtual retreat, and they actually had some good tidbits in that, and they shared a document like an agenda.
Oh,
So if you go to the FFA.org website and go register at that Forever Blue, it's I can't remember exactly who did it and where it is, but it is on that website.
oh.
So it was worth the time I watched it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, great. We don't have to do that one because it's already been done. Love it. And yeah, And again, if I can help you out, if I can provide some resources for you, if you say, hey, I'd love 15 minutes on goal setting. But again, those bell ringers, those warm ups, those kind of do nows, whatever you want to call them, those are 3 to 10 minute activities that you can just pile 3 of them together and have a pretty good goal setting 30-minute workshop. So.
Hey, Jason. Sounds like I needed to be a part of your first webinar. My chapter officers kind of went underground when we went to virtual schooling. They just kind of abandoned everything. So I sent out a survey of how to deal with some of our end of year things, including electing the next officers. And I sent that to the whole chapter, and the majority was wait until next fall to elect them. So the majority of my officers were sophomores, so there's a good chance a lot of them will be returning in some capacity. But I guess I'm a little confused on what to do for a retreat. We did a small retreat last year. They loved it. I don't know if I should just do it with the existing officers, if we should try to elect early August and then throw the whatever new officers into a retreat. I feel like once school starts, it's too crazy. We've tried it before, and things get too busy to try to get the kids together on a bigger scale once school starts. So any thoughts on how to transition from old to new and when to train them?
Yeah. So I think retreats have traditionally been looked at as a way to kick off the year, a way to come together, and that's great. But I think the reason that we have retreat and repeat is that we can intertwine both of those. And so I'd say use that distributed practice as far as just give them some content to devour at the beginning. Say, hey, here's some time management content. Here's how to use our AET calendar. Here's just kind of those basic tools they need. And then I would restructure the content objectives of a retreat and maybe try to have it later on in the year. Maybe it's winter break where you guys have a 2-day, in a cabin. But what you're accomplishing is not like, hey, let's get to know each other, because they've already done that. What you're accomplishing then is like, let's just get a head start on banquet, or hey, what are some cool culture things we could do for our chapter? So I think it's just changing the objectives. I don't think retreats obviously are a lot of fun in the summertime, and that's kind of why we have them. We use them as a kickoff, bring everyone together. It's just not possible in the fall, like you said. Sports are going on. They're traveling. They got all the things going on in the world. Can't get everyone together. I do think it's essential if you're going to have a retreat to have everyone there. And I would say if you don't, I just wouldn't expect much out of that officer that wasn't there, because they're going to feel like they aren't. So in instituting that repeat process of training, send a year out and say, like, every 2 weeks, I'm going to send you another 10-minute activity. It doesn't have to be a lot, but to me, this is less about, I can't have a retreat, and more about, hey, what else can we do to equip officers? So that's a tough situation. But I mean, obviously, students spoke and said, we want to make sure we see them in person before we elect them, and that's important too. So kind of got to balance that. Someone asked.
I'm in.
Go ahead.
We actually were looking at doing the same thing. Your officers decided to just elect in August when we came back. But we asked our officers and our membership, and they actually decided that they would like a virtual election. So this was untreaded waters. It was all new to myself, my teaching partner, and we did it. I don't know what state you're in, but I'm in Texas, and we did our elections consist of a vote, an application, and a test. So Judging Card set up the test for us. They did it online. We actually had a Zoom where the kids had to have 2 devices, one for the test, one so we could see that they were staying on the Judging Card exam. And then they got online to our Texas FFA website and uploaded their speeches. The kids went in, used their membership IDs to vote. So everything was done electronically. As far as the application part, we sent all of that PDF format to those judges, and we got an officer team about a month ago. So it worked very flawlessly. We actually are thinking of doing this from this way here on out because it was so easy. Not knowing what is ahead with us with COVID situation. But if you have any questions, I don't mind sharing exactly how we did it, or if maybe your state association has something similar that they can help you out with.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. 2 questions on here I want to cover really quick. Your last webinar, how do you get the free Canva? The link on the last page of sources in the last set of slides, which should be on the Bloom inside of the toolbox. So the whole reason we're doing this, on Bloom's website, you'll have the chapter toolbox, and all these things will be on there indefinitely for you to go back and refer to. So in the slides, the Canva link takes you to the education page, and you just apply through them. I don't know what the step is after because obviously I don't have a school email, so I couldn't even get to the first step. But yeah, just apply with a school email. The Facebook business page, I believe you just create a separate page using an account you already have. So maybe you have to create an account with your chapter and then just create a page for that. I'm not sure if it needs to be tied to a personal advisor's page or what. Bell ringer link was sent. And then if you're going to send a box to officers prior to the retreat, what would you put in there? Good question. I'm always a big fan of swag. Cheap swag. You can get like 300 stickers made for $20. Make some stickers. Put something funny on there. I don't know. You make a chapter mascot, like a chicken or something, and put that chicken on some stickers and send them some stickers. I'm a big fan of that. You know, kids always have the Hydro Flasks, the water bottles. You know, just put a sticker on there. I just put some cheap swag, and then just maybe a note saying I'm excited to have you as an officer. Let's get rolling. I think the more you build up the expectation of leadership and their responsibility, I think the more excited chapter officers become. So, and then, like you said, I think the higher, or someone said I'll expire for my chapter to be at level 4. I think, yeah, just remove that ceiling and say, let's get there. Okay. What are the questions we got? All right, with that, it's almost 2 p.m., 11 a.m. here. Hey, again, I appreciate everyone. If there's anything I can do for you, if you have, you know, if you want to have a full-blown chapter officer retreat and bring in guests, I do that. I'm not advertising that, but I'm just saying I've done that before. I love traveling, meeting chapters if that's allowed. If they've, you know, uncanceled friendship, I'm all about it. So, yeah, next one is in 2 weeks. We'll be diving into some actual content of like, hey, here's some goal setting content, or here's something. I haven't decided what's exactly it's going to be yet. If you have suggestions, send them to Bloom, send them to me. But yeah, stay connected with us, y'all. We appreciate you, appreciate what you do. The light is at the end of the tunnel. We are going to be out of this thing soon and back to normal FFA life soon. I believe it. Appreciate y'all. Thanks so much for joining us. And if there's anything else I can do for you, just let us know. Thank y'all.